Hi everyone, I'm Jackie, and today's video I will be covering the latest update, August 13th, 2025 from College Board. They have released new questions. I'll be covering the hard questions of expression of ideas, which covers rhetorical synthesis and transition words. You're going to want to watch this because there are some surprises in the questions. And just, I would want to know these if I were taking the upcoming SAT exam this Saturday. So, per usual, let's jump in. Okay, so let's see. You've probably been trained to just read the question and then go to the answer choices and eliminate them. I'm telling you, in both Module 1 and Module 2, you're going to come across more challenging rhetorical synthesis, not for every single one, but to be careful, I would encourage you to read everything so that you get them right, because more often than not, students are coming with their expression of ideas domain docked off a couple bars, and it doesn't have to be that way. Let's look at this question. So, since I know I'm dealing with the hard ones, I am going to read the student notes. So, while researching a topic, a student is taking the following notes. Digital light synthesis, DLS, is a form of additive manufacturing that utilizes light to rapidly cure liquid resin into high quality 3D objects. Ultraviolet light images are projected up into a pool of liquid resin where the object's first layer takes shape. The partially cured resin object is raised, leaving a thin space, a dead zone beneath it for oxygen and liquid resin to flow through. Step 3, the UV light passes through the dead zone, maintaining a flow of resin and partially cures additional layers of the object. Step 4, when the resin object is complete, it is baked in an oven to complete the curing. Okay, so here it says the student wants to describe how DLS cures 3D objects, which choice most effectively uses relevant information from the notes to accomplish this goal. So let's look at these questions. Option A, DLS is a form of additive manufacturing that creates a dead zone in which UV light solidifies layer by layer before being baked in an oven, creating a high quality 3D object. Okay, so this is saying that the UV light solidifies being baked in an oven. Is that true? I don't think so, right? Because what's actually baked in the oven? It's not the UV light, it is the object that's baked in the oven. Okay, so we see there's a direct contradiction of the notes. I can eliminate. Option B, DLS cures 3D objects by passing through a dead zone, adding layers to the object, then curing the object in the oven. Well, here this part's okay, curing the object in the oven, but is the first part okay? I don't think so. Because DLS cures 3D objects by passing through a dead zone. What passes through the dead zone? It says the UV light passes through the dead zone. It's not the 3D object. So, yet again, another contradiction. Option choice C. In DLS, UV light images are projected into a liquid resin pool to cure 3D object layer by layer. Once solidified, the object is baked in an oven. That seems good. And let me just check option D. In DLS, UV light is projected into layers of liquid resin until the resin solidifies and passes through a dead zone wherein the curing is completed. So this is saying that the curing is completed in a dead zone. No, it is completed in the oven. So therefore, we can safely choose option C as our winner. Okay, but you see just how tricky that one was. There was actually misinterpretation or contradictions in the student notes in every single answer choice. And I'm telling you, you're going to want to be careful on the exam with these student notes. Okay, let's see another hard rhetorical synthesis from CB. Okay, so here, while researching a topic, a student is taking the following notes. Okay, British scholar Robert Platt described fossilized dinosaur bones in his 1676 book, The Natural History of Oxfordshire. Interesting. Platt earned a reputation for being the first person to have discovered dinosaur remains. In 1990, archaeologists in Lesotho in southern Africa discovered a fossilized phalanx of a Mesosyndilus carandais MC dinosaur in a cave once inhabited by humans. Indigenous Kosian and Basotho peoples had inhabited the cave beginning around 1100 CE. According to paleontologist Julian Bonnet, these peoples may have found the phalanx and brought it to the cave centuries before Platt's descriptions. Okay, interesting. So we want to emphasize the significance of the 19 discovery to his reputation, to Platt's reputation. So let's go through the notes. Option A. Benoit challenged Platt's reputation for being the first person to have discovered M. caritas remains. That's actually not correct because it says right here he discovered dinosaur remains. It doesn't say that he discovered specifically the M. caritas remains. So no, we can discard option B. Sorry, not B, A. B, evidence that Khoisan and Basotho peoples may have found an M. caritas as long as go as 1100 CE suggests that Platt may not have been the first person to have discovered dinosaur remains. I mean, yes, I think that's what was being suggested from the student notes. And I would keep that one. C, according to Benoit's analysis of the 1990 discovery, indigenous peoples in Southern Africa may have brought the fossilized phalanx to the cave as long ago as 1100 CE. Okay, I mean, perhaps, but that has nothing to do about Platt's reputation. So that one we can discard. And in 1990, more than 3 centuries after, Platt claimed in his book that he had found fossilized dinosaur bones. Archaeologists uncovered evidence in southern Africa that disproved his claim. This is kind of twisting the notes a bit because here it says that archaeologists uncovered evidence that disproved his claims. They're not disproving his claims. It's that the discovery itself is challenging Platt's reputation that he was the first to discover the dinosaur bones or dinosaur remains. So another misinterpretation, and therefore we can safely choose option B as the answer. Okay, but you see, yet again, we have to read super carefully and be on the lookout for these little changes in the student notes to safely arrive to the correct answer. Okay, next up. So, oops, we want provide a historical overview of the two theories. So I'm going to read what the two theories are. So we have, while researching the topic, a student is taking the following notes. Two opposing theories of vision divided scholars for many centuries. The ancient Greek mathematician Euclid supported the extramission theory. This theory held that eyes emit a form of radiation that illuminates objects in its range. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle supported the intromission theory. This theory held that objects emit a form of radiation that reaches the eyes. In the 11th century, Arab mathematician Ibn al-Haytham largely settled the debate with the first conclusive experiment supporting intromission. Okay, so let's see. Option A. So scholars were divided between the extramission and intromission theories of vision until Ibn al-Haytham's 11th century experiments largely settled the debate in support of intromission. Well, that sounds pretty good. Gonna keep it. Let's check the other ones. Option B. Through two opposing theories of vision, extramission and intromission, Euclid, Aristotle, and Ibn Haytham held that a form of radiation is emitted either from objects or from the eyes. Okay, that's interesting, but I don't see any historical overview happening. So not 11B. C, while Ibn al-Haytham largely settled the debate in the 11th century, Aristotle supported the theory of intromission centuries before. I mean, that's only mentions one theory we can eliminate. Before the 11th century, the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle supported the intromission theory. Again, I only see intromission. There's two theories, extramission and intromission. So I can also safely discard option D. And therefore, it must be option A, which does make context of the two theories. And it also provides the historical overview of the two theories. Okay, that one was easier, I think, but still a good one nonetheless. Okay, Next up, while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. So in a 2023 study, environmental scientist Jasmine Locke Rodriguez and colleagues tested the use of floating treatment wetlands, FTWs, in Florida. FTWs are artificial floating platforms of plants used to remediate polluted or nutrient imbalanced water. Finding: FTWs using marigold flowers remove 52% more total phosphorus than the control. Finding: the test yielded 65 market quality blooms per square meter. The authors concluded marigolds showed promising potential as a commercially viable remediating crop cultivated on the FTWs in South Florida. Okay, interesting. So he wants to present the findings of the study. Okay, so we know what the findings are and he needs to present them. So let's go through the answer choices and see if which one properly presents the findings. So option A: the authors concluded that marigolds grown on FTWs were commercially viable, having produced 65 blooms per square meter of the market quality blooms in the 2023 study. Okay, well, actually, that's okay. However, there's two findings. I would want them to mention the phosphorus part of the experiment if it's going to present the findings, multiple findings of the study. So this one, incomplete. Option B: in a 2023 study, Locke Rodriguez and colleagues found that marigolds cultivated on FTWs produced 52% more market quality flower blooms than the control. Okay, so that's not correct, right? Because we said it was 52% more total phosphorus, produced 52% more market quality blooms. No, more phosphorus. So here I can see that there's a direct contradiction. C: Locke, Rodriguez, and colleagues found that FTWs using marigolds not only helped remove phosphorus from the water, but also yielded market quality blooms. That would be correct, right? They have the yield of the market quality blooms and the mention that it helped to remove phosphorus. I'm going to keep C, but let's check on D. FTWs using marigolds, Locke, Rodriguez, and colleagues found yielded 65 flower blooms, and removed 52% of phosphorus from water. Okay, this is also a contradiction, but you see this remove 52%, it's 52% more total phosphorus from water. That actually does change things, putting the more in the problem. And also this yielded 65 flower blooms. It should be per square meter, to be fully precise with the notes. Okay, so we can see a bunch of contradictions again in the notes, and it's going to be our correct option C. Okay, but you see it's really important to read really carefully these ones because we're seeing, right, a bunch of contradictions within the notes. Next up, so this one: while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Jupiter, a name drawn from Greek mythology, is an exoplanet that orbits the star PSR B1257 plus 12, also known as Lich. Bobator's mass is 0.01 times that of Jupiter, or 0.01 Jupiter masses. Mastika, which means gem or jewel in Malay, is an exoplanet that orbits the Siddhar HD 179949, also known as Gumala. Mastika's mass is 0.92 Jupiter masses. The student wants to make and support a generalization about exoplanets. Okay, so let's see which one can be our winner. Okay, so option A: exoplanets that are named Phobetor, that are named Phobetor orbit Lich, and those that are named Masika orbit Quamala. Okay, well, this is not correct. It doesn't talk about exoplanets. We only know there's one exoplanet named Phobetor and one exoplanet named Mastika. Okay. What a misinterpretation. B: even though Phobetor and Mystica are both exoplanets, their masses are different. Phobetor's mass is 0.01, and Jupiter masses and Mystica's is 0.92 Jupiter masses. Okay, I mean, this is factually correct, but it's just telling me about the masses. That's not making a generalization about exoplanets. Option C, many stars have both a designation and a proper name. For instance, PSRB 1257 plus 12 is known as Lish, and HD 179949 is also known as Gumala. Okay, so C, it's trying to use information from the notes, but we can see that it's talking about stars, and we're focused on exoplanets. So we can discard C. It must be correct choice D. But let's see. Exoplanets' names have diverse origins, a fact that can be seen in the cases of Jupiter, a name drawn from Greek mythology, and Mystica, which means gem, or Malay. Yes, and it's making a generalization, the fact that these planets have diverse origins, and therefore D, our correct choice. Okay, final one released by College Board in the hard category of rhetorical synthesis is this one. So here, while researching a topic, a student's taken the following notes. The National Congress of American Indians, NCAI, was founded in 1944 by representatives of 50 tribal governments. The NCAI was created to protect the sovereignty of indigenous tribes. Napoleon B. Johnson, Cherokee, was the NCAI's first president. In 1975, the U.S. Congress passed the Indian Self-Determination Education Assistance Act, Public Law 96638. This legislation formally acknowledged tribes' rights to self-governance. The advocacy of NCAI was a key factor of the law's passing. Okay, so we want to identify an accomplishment of the NCAI. So let's see, option A. The NCAI, founded by representatives of 50 tribal governments, had Napoleon B. Johnson as its first president. Okay, that's interesting, but I'm not seeing really an accomplishment of this organization, so doesn't do what the student wants to accomplish. B, founded in 1944, the NCAI was created by representatives of tribal governments from 50 sovereign indigenous tribes. So again, it seems like it's okay. It's not misinterpreting the notes, but it has nothing to do with an accomplishment. C, the NCAI's advocacy was key to passing the Public Law 96638, legislation formally acknowledges indigenous tribes to self-governance. That seems correct, and that would be a pretty big accomplishment that they got this law passed and they could have this right to self-governance. So seems pretty good to me. But let's check D. In 1975, the NCA passed the Indian Self-Determination, which was created to protect the sovereignty of indigenous tribes. So if you didn't read the notes, and you could probably get down to these two answer choices, but then you'd still have to go back and check the notes. There is a contradiction here. The NCI did not pass the Indian Self-Determination Act. It was US Congress that passed. Oh my goodness, another contradiction. And therefore, we can safely deduce that it is correct choice C. Okay, so student notes, make sure that you're super comfortable with them. Maybe you'll have to read them. I encourage you to read them in both Module 1 and Module 2, just so that you're extra meticulous and that you don't lose any points in the expression of ideas. So also another question type that falls under expression of ideas are advanced transition words. Let's take a look at those. So here we have in Asiya Wadood's 2022 poem, Shorn Treaded Red, the poet contemplates a painting that has inspired her. Edil Adnan's 2020 work, Satellites 27. The painting, which features overlapping geometric shapes, fuels the poem's exploration of temporality and identity. In responding to Adrian's work, Wadood's poem reflects on the relationship between poetry and other art forms. To me, it's like furthering the information provided about the poem in the sentence. So I would be looking for a blank that correlates to that. So in other words, it's not putting anything into other words or like restating the same idea in a simpler way. So no. For instance, it's also not providing any example. What's more, I think so, because it is basically saying like another additional thing in responding to Adnan's work is that the poem reflects the relationship between poetry and art forms. I like it. Conversely, no, it's not. There is no contrast or opposing idea. So therefore, it must be what is more, which we use when we want to put a new additional point that's building upon the previous idea. So I am really liking that one. That would be synonymous with, just for those that are curious, like addition and furthermore. Other amazing SAT transition words that maybe you could see, on the exam. Okay, next. Modernist architects champion nature in their designs. The wavy staircase and ornate floral tile work of Hospital de Saint Pau, a modernista hospital designed by Luis Dominic y Montaner, couldn't exactly grow in a forest. Still, one sees natural influences in Dominic Montgomery's penchant for curves rather than right angles and plant and animal inspired flourishes. Okay, so this one, it seems like the architects, they champion nature in their divines. And that's like the wavy staircase, tile work, da da da, couldn't exactly grow in a forest. So it's like acknowledging the limitation of something the modernist architects couldn't do. So it's like acknowledging something, acknowledging a limitation, and looking at the answer choices. Like, furthermore, no, it's not. It's not adding a supporting idea or supporting claim from the previous sentence. Similarly, no, because similar would be if we're comparing two situations or examples, which I don't think is happening. Of course. Oh, that could work because this would be used for acknowledging a limitation. Oh, doesn't like how I spelled that. That one can work. And thus would be a cause and effect relationship. And this sentence isn't a result of the first sentence. It's just saying, like, of course, they couldn't exactly grow in a forest. So, therefore, I would say our winner is option C. Isn't it amazing? Hmm. Okay, so whenever you're acknowledging a limitation, go for, of course, on the exam. Okay, continue our journey. In the late 20th century, scholars directed much discussion towards issues of spatiality. Adherence to quantitative analytical approaches delineated space with the use of GIS spatial technologies. Cultural geographic Doreen Massey defines space as the product of an ever-shifting social geometry of power and signification, focusing instead on socio-political forces. So I can definitely see that Doreen has a totally different approach. She instead focused on socio-political forces. So there is a contrast occurring here, which is interesting to note. So let's go through the answer choices. For example, it's not providing an example of the previous sentence, so no. By contrast, that actually matches what I was looking for, so perhaps it's this one. Um, as such, as such would be the same as, hence, as a result, it's, I didn't note any cause and effect relationship. So I don't really like that one. And D, likewise, again, this one I don't think works because this would be if, like similarly, if we're introducing a similar or parallel idea, but that's not what's happening. The approach isn't similar, it's different, it's a contrast, and therefore should be B. Okay, oh, final one. The Madison is a type of line dance that involves neat rows of dancers performing a repeated sequence of steps in unison. Many other dances are also defined by order, repetition, and synchronicity. So I see. Interesting. But the Madison is distinguished by its extreme uniformity. When an auditorium full of dancers performs the Madison, one almost gets the impression of a military march. Okay. So here I definitely wouldn't have any contrast words like however, other dancers. No. What happens here, and notice I highlighted the but, it's like acknowledging. We see, oh my goodness, yeah, another acknowledgement. Let me spell it correctly this time. Acknowledge. So here, right, it's acknowledging the fact like, yes, there are other dancers that have this repeated sequences, but the Madison has extreme uniformity. And we already did a previous one that was acknowledging um, the the specifics of a different topic, but I was acknowledging. So it's of course, I'm pretty sure, but let's go through. Like specifically, well, specifically would be if it was really narrowing down or elaborating on the same subject with more into detail. But no, it talks about many other dances. So that wouldn't make sense. And moreover, it's not adding to the information, it's just acknowledging that there are other dances that have repetition, but the Madison is the most extreme of repetition. Okay. So it seems like, of course, I would predict could be on the August SAT and definitely a word worth knowing, as well as the other ones that we've seen today. Okay, so that wraps up all the hard, newly released questions of the expression of ideas, which only consist of transition words and rhetorical synthesis. So be sure to be super meticulous with the student notes. Don't just read the question, read the student notes, look for those contrasts. That's how you won't fall into the traps. Know all these transition words and like, rate, and subscribe if you like this video. And thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Leave any comments if you have any below. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Bye, guys.